They say blood is thicker than water. But what happens when your own blood cuts you the deepest? My name is Zara Camille. The night my parents decided to leave everything to my brother, they didn't just take away an inheritance, they erased me. That night, my mother sent one text that ended it all. "It's over between us, Zara." But she had no idea she wasn't ending me. She was creating someone she'd never be able to control again. So grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and step into the storm with me. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a story about rebirth. Each twist in this series will hit harder than the last, so make sure you subscribe right now, because the next part of Zara's story will leave you speechless. If your own family erased you like Zara, would you fight to belong again? Or build a new world without them? My name is Zara Camille, the youngest daughter in a family where every wall carried a photo of my brother, Lucas, the golden child. All my life, I thought if I worked harder, maybe my parents would finally look at me with pride. I graduated early, paid off my own tuition, helped my parents cover bills when things got tight. But to them, I was still just the girl. Number Vox. That night, the dinner table smelled like roasted chicken and red wine. Dad sat at the head of the table, his voice calm, too calm like he'd been rehearsing this moment for weeks. "Your mother and I talked it over," he said, clearing his throat. "Everything we own, the house, the company, the land, it'll all go to Lucas. A son carries the family legacy. You'll have a husband to take care of you one day." The fork slipped from my hand. I stared at him, then at Mom, who wouldn't even look up. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mom finally whispered, "You have to understand, sweetheart. A man keeps the family name. That's just how it is." Her words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to scream, "What about everything I've done for you? All the nights I worked to help you stay afloat?" But I didn't, because deep down I already knew my place in this house invisible. I stood up, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Thanks for dinner," I said. "And thanks for making it crystal clear where I stand in this family." No one stopped me. Behind me, I heard Lucas chuckle, that smug laugh that always followed my silence. I stepped outside into the rain. Cold drops hit my face, but it wasn't nearly as cold as what I felt inside. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "It's over between us, Zara, don't come back." I read it once. Then again. "It's over between us?" She said it like I was a stranger, not her daughter. That night, I drove aimlessly through the dark Carolina roads, rain hitting the windshield like bullets. Every mile I drove, a piece of my old self disappeared. And somewhere between the tears and the thunder, I made myself a promise. One day, they'll remember the name they tried to erase, Zara Camille. I didn't know how or when. But I knew this, that dinner didn't just end my place in the family. It started my war. After that night, the house I grew up in no longer felt like home. It felt like a museum of lies. Walls that once echoed laughter now whispered, "You don't belong here." I packed my life into 2 suitcases, tossed them into my old Ford Escape, and left before sunrise. No one followed. No one stood on the porch to watch me go. As I drove away, the morning fog rolled in, swallowing the house behind me until it disappeared completely, just like I did in their hearts. I ended up in Charlotte, barely an hour and a half from home, but it felt like another world. I rented a small studio above a laundromat, peeling paint, humming pipes, and one flickering bulb that made the room look like it was always half awake. My first night there, I sat on the floor eating instant noodles from a paper cup. The silence was so heavy I could hear my own breathing. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone. But loneliness has a strange way of becoming fuel. When no one is left to believe in you, you start learning how to believe in yourself. I worked wherever they'd hire me. Morning shifts at a coffee shop, night shifts at a convenience store. Some customers looked at me like I was invisible, others like I was disposable. But every paycheck, every hour of exhaustion, reminded me that I was free. One night, while I was closing the shop, I saw a news article pop up on my phone. Lucas Camille, my brother, had been promoted to executive director of our family company. His photo flashed across the screen, grinning beside my parents. Their caption read, "Our proud legacy continues." I felt something inside me twist, not jealousy, not even anger, just a raw ache that no amount of work could cover. They'd erased me completely. But the funny thing about being erased? Sometimes, that's exactly when you start to rewrite yourself. Over time, I began saving money, a few dollars here, a few more there. I enrolled in night classes in business administration, learning things I used to hear Dad brag about at dinner parties. I studied until my eyes burned, fueled by the same question that haunted me since that night. What would happen if I became everything they said I couldn't be? I didn't have an answer yet, but I was determined to find it. Because if they thought cutting me off would break me, they clearly didn't know what kind of storm they'd just created. You think Zara's pain ends here? Think again. The storm she's building is only getting stronger, and the next twist will leave you breathless. But remember, this story only grows because of you. Every like, share, and subscribe keeps Revenge House USA alive, giving power to stories where pain turns into strength and silence becomes justice. You're not just a viewer, you're the heartbeat of this channel, the reason every story finds its voice. If your family shut the door on you like this, would you walk away or rise and come back stronger? If you loved this video, hit subscribe to stand with Zara and every survivor of betrayal. If you didn't, comment #4 below and tell us why. Your voice helps us grow and make every story more powerful. Time moved like mud after that. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I worked, I studied, I survived, but somewhere inside me, I was still that girl standing in the rain, clutching a phone that said, "It's over between us." Until one Friday evening, everything changed again. I was cleaning tables at the cafe when my coworker called out, "Hey Zara, there's something on the news about your family." My stomach tightened. I turned toward the TV above the counter. There he was, Lucas. Not smiling this time. The headline read, "Camille Corporation files for bankruptcy amid financial scandal." I froze. The company my father spent decades building, the same one I was deemed unworthy to inherit, was collapsing. My first reaction wasn't satisfaction. It was sadness. Because no matter how much they hurt me, part of me still wanted them to be okay. But then I got the call. A number I hadn't seen in years. Dad's number. "Zara?" His voice trembled. "It's your mom. She's in the hospital. Heart complications. She's asking for you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my coat and drove to Greenville Memorial Hospital, rain streaking across my windshield again, just like that night I left. When I walked into the room, Mom was sitting up, pale and frail, with Lucas standing by her bed. He looked surprised to see me. She didn't. "Zara," she said softly, "you shouldn't have come." Her words stung worse than any wound. "I heard you were sick," I said quietly. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." She turned away, her voice cold. "We don't need your pity. You left. You made your choice." I blinked, stunned. "You told me to leave. You said it was over." "Don't twist my words," she snapped. "You embarrassed this family. You chose your own path now. Live with it." I stood there, feeling my chest tighten, every heartbeat like a hammer. Lucas kept his head down, avoiding my eyes. He looked smaller now, like the empire he'd inherited had crumbled around him. I wanted to shout, to ask her why. Why, even now, after everything, she couldn't show 1 ounce of love. But I didn't. Because suddenly I understood something she never would. I didn't need her approval anymore. I walked out of that hospital room quietly, my footsteps echoing down the sterile hallway. By the time I reached the parking lot, the tears had stopped. The girl who entered that room was gone. The woman who left, she was someone new. Someone colder. Sharper. Unbreakable. That night, I whispered to my reflection in the car window, "You wanted me gone, Mom? Fine. But next time you hear my name, it'll be everywhere." When I left that hospital, something inside me finally died, but something else was born. Not the broken daughter they abandoned. Someone quieter, stronger. Someone who didn't need anyone's approval to breathe. I sold my old Ford Escape, packed what little I owned, and moved to Atlanta. I didn't tell a soul. No calls, no texts, just silence. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's the sound of rebuilding. I got a small apartment near Piedmont Avenue, a place that smelled faintly of rain and fresh paint. My neighbor, an old woman named Mrs. Langford, used to leave muffins by my door because she said I looked too serious for someone so young. She wasn't wrong. During the day, I worked as an assistant for a financial firm downtown, making copies, taking calls, delivering coffee to executives who didn't even remember my name. At night, I stayed at the office long after everyone else had gone home, reading investment reports and market analyses I wasn't supposed to see. I didn't have a mentor, so I taught myself how to read numbers like stories, how to spot greed before it spreads, how to see weakness in people who thought they were untouchable. Every mistake I made became fuel. Every rejection became a lesson. 3 years passed. 3 years of silence, sweat, and sacrifice. And then, one morning, it happened. My boss quit suddenly, and the CEO called me into his office. "Zara," he said, "you've been holding this place together. You're sharp, and you don't flinch under pressure. How'd you like to run the department?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. That day, I walked out of that office, not as an assistant, but as Zara Camille, Director of Financial Strategy. It wasn't just a title. It was proof that I could build an empire from ashes. I started saving aggressively, investing quietly, and building something of my own. Camille Capital Group, a consulting firm that helped small businesses recover from debt and rebuild their futures. Ironically, I was helping strangers do what my own family never did for me: stand back up. But I didn't build it for revenge. Not yet. I built it so that when the time came, I'd have the power to decide what mercy looks like. The day I signed the final incorporation papers, I looked out the window of my new office and whispered. They thought silence meant defeat. But silence was just my strategy. You've seen Zara rise from nothing. But the calm before the storm is ending, and her silence is about to speak louder than ever. Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe to be the first to witness her comeback. If you were Zara, would you forgive the past? Or use it as fuel for your rise? Success has a strange silence to it. It doesn't roar, it hums, quietly, steadily, like a storm waiting to break. By the time I turned 30, Camille Capital Group had grown from a one-woman dream into a thriving firm. We advised companies, recovered debts, rebuilt futures. Ironically, I'd become everything my father said I couldn't be: powerful, decisive, respected. But even then, I never looked back. Not until that one morning. It was a Tuesday. My assistant came in holding a printed email, her face pale. Zara, this came through the general contact inbox. It's from someone named Lucas Camille." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I took the paper and read it slowly. "Zara, Mom and Dad are losing the house. The bank's foreclosing next month. I know you probably hate us, but please, you're the only one who can help. V." The irony hit harder than any insult ever could. The same brother who watched me walk away without a word now begging for my help. The same parents who erased me now needed the daughter they disowned. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline through the glass wall. For the first time in years, I smiled. The next day, I called the bank handling their foreclosure. "Can you confirm the property address?" I asked. The clerk replied, "Yes, ma'am. 214 Rosewood Drive. My childhood home." Within an hour, Camille Capital bought the mortgage quietly, cleanly, under a subsidiary name. They didn't even know who held their fate. Weeks later, my phone buzzed again. A meeting request. Subject line: loan renegotiation. The Camille family. I accepted it. When the day came, I walked into the conference room early. The air was cold, sterile, just the way I liked it. Then the door opened. Dad stepped in first. Slower now, older. Mom followed, clinging to her purse like it was a lifeline. Lucas trailed behind, eyes sunken, pride long gone. They didn't recognize me at first. But when Mom looked up and saw my nameplate on the glass wall, her knees nearly buckled. "Zara," she whispered. I smiled. "Welcome to Camille Capital. How may I help you?" Silence. The same silence they gave me years ago now returned to them, doubled. I listened as they begged for a payment extension, saying they just needed time. Every word dripped with the same entitlement that once crushed me. When they finished, I nodded politely. "Unfortunately," I said, "this case is already closed." They didn't know that the house, their house, was already being transferred. Not to me, but to a women's shelter I funded under my company's name. As they left, heads down, I whispered under my breath, "Tables turn, Mom?" Always. The night after that meeting, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt, because of clarity. I'd spent years chasing peace, believing it meant forgiveness. But standing across that table from the people who once erased me, I realized something else. Peace doesn't always come from letting go. Sometimes, it comes from closing the circle. A week later, the transfer was finalized. The deed to 214 Rosewood Drive was officially signed over not to me, but to a non-profit shelter for women and children escaping abuse and homelessness. The house that once made me feel unwanted would now become a place of refuge for those who had nowhere else to go. The press caught the story before I could even decide if I wanted it public. Headlines exploded across local news. Daughter buys parents' home, donates it to women's shelter. From betrayal to empowerment, the Zara Camille story. At first, I tried to stay quiet. But when a reporter called my office asking for comment, I said yes. Maybe because for the first time I had nothing left to hide. They asked, "Why did you do it? Was it revenge?" I smiled at the camera and said, "I didn't do it for revenge. I did it for justice and for every girl who was told she didn't matter." That line went viral overnight. Messages poured in from women, single moms, survivors, daughters just like me. They said, "You gave us a voice." Funny thing is, I never meant to start a movement. I just wanted closure. Meanwhile, my parents couldn't show their faces in town anymore. The neighbors whispered. Lucas deleted his social media. For the first time in my life, their silence wasn't my punishment, it was theirs. A few weeks later, I drove past Rosewood Drive. The front porch had been repainted white, and a new sign hung above the door. Second Sunrise Shelter. I stopped the car, stepped out, and stood there for a long time. A little girl peeked out the window and waved at me. Her smile, small, shy, pure, said everything I needed to hear. That house no longer belonged to my past. It belonged to hope. As I walked away, I whispered to the wind, This is what justice looks like. Not anger. Not revenge. Just freedom wrapped in quiet power." After the headlines faded and the cameras turned away, life became quiet again, but this time, the silence felt different. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. I spent my mornings walking through the park near my apartment in Atlanta, sipping coffee and breathing in air that didn't taste like regret. For years, I'd chased validation, justice, closure, and somehow, I'd found all three without ever needing an apology. But then one morning, my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. When I opened it, my chest tightened. It was her. "Zara, we saw the news. You've become incredible. I'm sorry, I wish we had understood you sooner." It was signed, Mom. I stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring as my eyes filled. There it was, the apology I once begged for. But it came years too late, after everything had already turned to ash. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. Finally, I set the phone down and whispered to myself, "You don't owe them closure. You already gave it to yourself." That evening, I lit a candle on my balcony. The city stretched beneath me, glowing like an ocean of stars. For the first time, I didn't feel small beneath it. I felt free. Freedom, I realized, isn't about walking away from people. It's about walking toward yourself. And that's exactly what I'd done, one painful, deliberate step at a time. A few weeks later, I visited the Second Sunrise Shelter again. The same little girl I saw before came running up to me, holding a crayon drawing. It was a house, colored bright yellow, with a woman smiling in the doorway. "Is that your home?" I asked. She shook her head. "It's ours. You gave it to us." I smiled through tears I didn't expect to fall. In that moment, everything clicked, every sleepless night, every tear, every cruel word my mother ever said. It all led here, to this moment of grace. I didn't need revenge anymore, because I'd already won, not by breaking them, but by building something better. That night, as I drove home, the radio played softly in the background. A storm was rolling in, thunder echoing far away, the same kind of storm I left behind years ago. But this time, I wasn't afraid of it, because now, I was the storm. It's funny how full circle life can be. Years ago, I left my parents' house with 2 suitcases and a broken heart. Now, I was standing in front of hundreds of people, about to open the doors to something that would outlive me, the Camille Foundation for Women's Independence. The ceremony was held at a restored historic building in downtown Atlanta. The same city where I once struggled to afford rent was now home to a foundation that would fund housing, education, and startup programs for women rebuilding their lives, the kind of women I once was. As cameras flashed and journalists whispered my name, I didn't feel nervous. I felt grounded. Everything I had lost had somehow built the woman I'd become. When it was time to speak, I walked to the podium. The room went still. Years ago, I began. Someone told me I wasn't worth investing in, that my only value was in staying quiet, small, and obedient. They were wrong. Because silence, when used right, can shake the world. A murmur rippled through the audience. I caught sight of a few faces in the crowd, former colleagues, women I'd mentored, and even a few reporters who once wrote headlines about the revenge daughter. I smiled. This foundation isn't about revenge. It's about rebirth. Every woman who walks through these doors deserves a second sunrise. Applause filled the hall. For the first time, I didn't shy away from it. I let it wash over me, not as validation but as closure. Later, as the crowd dispersed, a reporter approached. "Zara," she said, "your story has inspired thousands. If your parents were watching this right now, what would you say to them?" I took a deep breath, the question hanging in the air like smoke. Then I smiled gently and said, "Mom, Dad, you were right about one thing. It is over between us. But I've started over too, and I'm doing just fine." The cameras clicked, capturing the moment not of vengeance but of victory. That evening, I stood outside under the warm Atlanta sky, watching the foundation's new sign light up. The Camille Foundation, where every woman rises. The wind carried the faint sound of laughter from inside, and for once, I didn't look back. Because rebirth isn't about going home. It's about realizing, you built a better one. And as the city lights shimmered below, I whispered to myself, this is the ending they wrote for me. And the new beginning I wrote for myself. Zara Camille's story reminds us betrayal can break you or build you. Don't miss more powerful stories like this. Hit subscribe to join Revenge House USA, where every scar tells a story, and every fall becomes a rise. If you were Zara, what would your new beginning look like? Comment your answer below. Your story might inspire the next one. Sometimes I still drive past the old roads of Greenville. The trees look the same, but the girl who once cried beneath them is gone. I used to replay that night over and over: the dinner, the rain, the text message that ended everything. It's over between us, Zara. Those words used to haunt me. Now they remind me of where my new life began. To the girl I used to be, I know you still wake up some nights wondering why they couldn't love you. Why the people who were supposed to protect you were the first to break you. But you don't need their love to be whole. You built something bigger than their approval. You built yourself. Revenge isn't fire anymore. It isn't about screaming, winning, or watching anyone fall. Fire burns fast. Real revenge is slower, patient, like rebuilding a house from the ruins, brick by brick, scar by scar, until the day you realize you're standing taller than everything that tried to bury you. People often ask me, Zara, what kept you going? And I always say hope dressed like stubbornness. I couldn't stop. Not when I knew my silence could become someone else's strength. When I walk through the Second Sunrise shelter and hear laughter coming from the hallways, it feels like justice. Not the kind signed by a judge, but the kind that lives in small victories: a mother getting her first job, a child sleeping in a safe bed, a woman finally smiling at her reflection. That's what rebuilding looks like. That's what real revenge feels like. Sometimes, late at night, I stand on the balcony of the Camille Foundation and look at the city lights below. I think about my parents, about Lucas. I wonder if they ever drive past Rosewood Drive and see the sign that says Second Sunrise. I wonder if they realize they were part of the story that created it. And maybe that's enough. Because I didn't rebuild to prove them wrong. I rebuilt because I wanted to live right. There's a strange peace that comes when you stop fighting to be understood. When you realize forgiveness doesn't mean saying, I'm okay. It means saying, I'm free. I used to chase revenge like it was a finish line. But now I know, the real finish line is peace. If someone ever broke you, Remember this, you don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to destroy to win. Just rise, quietly, gracefully. And one day, they'll look up and realize you became everything they said you couldn't. So if you're watching this, and your heart still hurts, let it. Pain is the soil where strength grows. And when you rise from it, rebuild something beautiful. Because that's the sweetest revenge of all. This is Revenge House USA, where betrayal meets rebirth. And revenge isn't about rage, it's about rebuilding. If Zara's story touched you, don't just watch, be part of the change. Subscribe, share this story, and remind someone out there. Healing is the most powerful revenge of all.